Well, hello and welcome to Naming in an AI Age. This week, we're going to talk about coming up with a great name. There are a lot of things to consider when coming up with a great name. What do you want it to look like, feel like, lean into? What's the vibe, the tone, related connotations? Do you want a made up name? Do you want a mashup of two words? Do you want a suggestive name? But really, what are some of the most important considerations you should think about when coming up with a name, Mike?
So this is a question that we obviously deal with all the time with clients and have been for almost, 40 years now. Let me share with you a journey that one client took us on and we helped them a little bit with. So years ago, a software company came to us and CAD/CAM platforms were a new thing. CAD/CAM stands for computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing. So before CAD/CAM systems, engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers would design things on these huge drafting tables. I mean, these things were massive with pencil and paper. It took forever, a lot of design work. And so a company came along and sort of established the category, and they named their product Autodesk. And it was an interesting name at the time because they were automating what engineers did on the desktop. So it was a very functional name. It spoke exactly to what their tool, their platform did. And our client was Intergraph, and they had a new improved platform for the same thing that was faster, it was simpler to use, had more capabilities, and it let engineers be more innovative with less effort, right? They could sort of push the boundaries and really come up with some cool new designs. So they wanted a name, and it was a big deal. If the name didn't work, the guy was going to lose his job. And because the name was such an important part of trying to gain a toehold in this category, we had this 600-pound gorilla, this Autodesk, that already owned it. And so we started asking some questions. And one of the questions we asked them was, well, what actually does the system deal with? Like, what kinds of things, and they talked about HVAC system design and circuit board design and automotive design and all this other stuff. And the gist was it dealt with physical materials, like with real material. It wasn't like virtual stuff, like digital stuff. It was actually, you're always designing, materials that you would then build something from. And the other thing they talked about was this really was something that was going to give the users an advantage over Autodesk because it was faster, it was more streamlined, had better capabilities, better integrated, and it really let them push the boundaries, the edge, if you will, of new designs. So we thought about, okay, what's some other ways to go for the physical materials? And one of the words that popped up was solid. And we liked solid because that's sort of related to what these guys, mostly guys at the time, few gals, dealt with in engineering and design work. They're all solids. And also solid sounded like it was a very stable, trusted platform, which was one of their challenges, right? They were sort of the newbie, and there's always this concern that, well, we've never heard of this software platform before. Has it been thoroughly tested and everything else? Well, Solid sort of addressed that because Intergraph had gone through all kinds of testing to make sure that it was as bug-free as it could be. And then we thought about, okay, and they're also providing an advantage. And Autodesk is a very functional name, but the home run hit for most names is something that's more aspirational. It's more benefit-oriented. It's more emotional. Now, they push back on that, saying, well, engineers are analytical. They're very left brain biased. They think logically. They're trained to be critical thinkers. They really aren't driven by emotions. They're driven by logical thinking. And we didn't agree with that. But we didn't tell them that, right? We didn't say, we don't think that's right. We said, well, but they always pride themselves on their design work. So if we could come up with a name that's a little bit more aspirational and still dealt with the functional, and that's where Solid Edge really delivered, because that was the name we ended up, Solid and Edge giving them an advantage, because if you're giving someone an edge, you're giving them an advantage. You're giving them a leg up on the competition. You're giving them a leg up on the old-fashioned way of the manual paper and pencil to do a design. And so they like that. Also, Edge sort of related to that innovation, right? That you make the biggest, coolest improvements on the edge of a design, on the boundaries of a design. So it spoke emotionally to, yeah, I want to create edgy designs. I want cool, innovative designs. I want a tool that's proven solid. So in answer to your question, I think you need to look at not just functional, but emotional and aspirational. So the type of name, that more engaging name, whether it's an engineer, a doctor, an accountant, or consumer, we're all human beings, right? We're all driven by emotions. And so if you can come up with a name that sounds cool and it's going to connect emotionally, man, you've got it. You're going to drive interest and excitement. So that was a big part of it, the style of the name. It ended up being hybrid, right? Solid Edge was somewhat functional, but also was emotional. And the other thing I think that's really important is understanding your target. We really had to talk through and help them share with us the mindset of the engineers, and even internally, the selling they were going to have to do internally to get their own management to buy into the name, because they were all technical people. And so that understanding of that, we've got to make it work for the team inside, that they can buy off on the name, and then of course the ultimate end users and purchasers of the product. So understanding the target and thinking about that more emotional, aspirational name are a couple things that I think are important. Since I've given my example on Intergraph, Ashley's got another example that she's going to share with you next week on another story, another client, totally different category, and a different perspective on which aspects of naming really are important. And it brings a whole different view and some other things to think about. So stay tuned next week when Ashley reveals another story about naming and what we discovered that was a real surprise for us and our client too. Thank you.
Bye.